the music part to me is to say that look at what life gives to you. Look at this intangible that is so wonderful that there's something more than this. There's something worth living for just by knowing that there's music and appreciating that.
Hi, I'm Joe Guidell, and welcome back to the podcast. I appreciate you being here today. Today, we're having a very powerful conversation with a fantastic musician, John Irizarry. Johnny's releasing his new album, This Girl. It's a beautiful tribute to his daughter, Lauren, also known as Izzy, who passed away in the year 2020. And we'll be going over the circumstances behind that in more detail in this conversation. But I hope there's two things that everyone takes away from this episode. Number one, that we're all inspired to be a little bit more empathetic. And number two, that we remember that we're all loved and we make that love known in the world in some positive capacity. So I want to thank Johnny again for his time today. This is a very emotional conversation. And please, when this album comes out, give it a listen. It's a beautiful testimony to Izzy's spirit. And I hope that everyone out there who listens to this podcast is inspired, even in the smallest of ways. And I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you for listening. John, thank you for being here today. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Fantastic. Good. So, I know you are a musician, and I just wanted to ask you a little bit about your upbringing and a little bit about your passion for music. But I think to start off, I just wanted to ask you, where are you from originally?
Originally, I'm from Corona, Queens, New York City. My parents moved there. I'm the youngest of 7. My parents, all my other siblings and my parents met on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And I was the first one. They decided to move out of there, and I was the first one that was born in Queens. And that's where I grew up. That's my background. Although I've been going to Cad's Deli since I'm a little kid, so I know my way around the Lower East Side pretty well.
Very nice. Very nice. What made you move up here to upstate New York?
Well, from Long Island, my wife and I had lived in East Meadow, Long Island, in a house she grew up in, and we kind of started to alter it and put add-ons, and finally, Long Island had become very expensive for what you got for your money, and we wanted more. We wanted more of what Orange County, New York had to offer. So we came up here. Well, my son was still young at the time. He was 3.5 when we first moved up, and my daughter was still in my wife's belly. So we really started our family up here, and it's been a great experience overall.
That's great.
Yeah.
I want to ask you. Yes, sorry.
So my older daughter is from a previous marriage. So she was older. She was already, by the time we came up here, she was living on her own with her boyfriend at the time, who was a great guy. I still love him. We talk all the time. My daughter, Lauren, and she lived in Ridgewood. She was in Ridgewood, Queens. Became quite iconic in the Lower East Side and Williamsburg area. She was a bartender. She worked as kind of a creative consultant to some different things and makeup artist, but she was very involved in that kind of world. And yeah, she stayed in Queens. She made her life there.
So I want to ask you, how many kids do you have?
Three. Well, I still, Lauren is still with me,
That's right.
so I still have three. I'm still her father.
Yeah, that's right. Definitely. I want to talk about the music real quick. Where, when did you discover that desire to perform and to actually create music? I know music is a passion of mine. Just love it, loving to. I love listening to it, and I feel like a lot of people discover at a very young age their interest in music. So when did you have that discovery for yourself when you realized that you love music?
Well, as I said, I'm the youngest of seven, but the next youngest to me is 16 years older, my sister Marion. So as a child, I was born in 1957. So as a kid, my sister thought it was funny to have me, like at 2 years old, imitating Elvis Presley and things like that. But by the time the Beatles, which was I was 7 years old, by the time the Beatles were on the Ed Sullivan Show, I already was indoctrinated into modern music of the time. I was a big fan of AM radio at the time. That's all there really was at that time. And I remember being very, very excited when the Beatles, at 7 years old, I knew who they were. I knew their music. Years later, when FM radio came into play, I was also getting older and I went and started listening to the Cream and Allman Brothers. May Dickie Betts rest in peace. He passed away today. And really, that was a big thing for me. When I was 14 years old, and I'm going to have to back step a little bit when we get to another part of the conversation about my brother. But when I was 14 years old, I went to a school dance at one of the Catholic schools. And I was right up against the stage, first school dance I'd ever gone to hear a live band. And it was a band called Chucky and Eddie. And Eddie Demiri was the hotshot guitar player. He was a few years older than me, and he was the hotshot guitar player. And standing against the stage, they came out, and the first song they played was "If, if the Allman Brothers, Statesboro Blues." And in my head, I said, I want to do that. That's what I want to do. I want to be that guy. And ever since, that's what I've done. That's been my heart and soul of me, is to do that next to my family. That's me, who I am. It's on my marriage certificate as my occupation.
Very nice. So you mentioned the Allman Brothers. Are who are some of your biggest influences when it comes to music?
Well, when early on, it was the Beatles and also 50s Motown, very big for me. I liked whatever was coming through AM radio. Even Frankie Valli and anything that sounded good, I liked, and that's always been the case. Going into the late 60s through the 70s, it was the heavier bands like the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Allman Brothers Band, and bands like that. When it got into the 80s, I was very big into the punk scene, go down to Lower East Side to CBGB's and Max's Kansas City. I got to see all those bands that in love from that era before they got their record contracts. So I saw the Ramones live, I saw Blondie live, I saw Talking Heads live before they got their contracts. And it was great. It was a great scene, and I'm glad I was a fly on the wall to witness it. And then 80s, 90s, my musical taste started to change, especially once Springsteen came onto the scene. I thought he was a kind of the bridge between punk and pop. And yeah, for me, when his music has changed over time, but it was just gritty and a little less threatening, I think, than than punk was. So I really have been a fan of his ever since. And since then, I've been very much into the Americana scene and alt country, things like that. But anything, I'll go wherever this sound takes me. If it sounds good, I'm going that way.
You mentioned alt country. Do you like Wilco?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I went to see them at the Capitol Theater, and for one of their shows last year, I guess last year, and it was the most amazing show. It was just such a great show. I have to thank my friend Jason Upchurch for that. He took me, he goes, "Come on, we're going," and I was very thankful to see them. And I like their albums already, but to see them live is a whole other scene. And what I love about Jeff Tweedy is I feel that that is his mind, watching his mind work, all that beauty and all that dissonance coming at you at the same time that are interacting with each other. And I think um, that's his mind. And I recognize that more so when I saw them live. I go, wow, that's what this guy is sending out. This is what you're viewing.
Yeah, the Capitol Theater is a very good venue. I really like that place. I actually saw Bob Dylan there. I'm
Oh,
a big fan of Bob Dylan.
oh
So
yeah.
yeah, it's a good concert. Yeah, so I wanted to ask you. You mentioned your brother. You mentioned your sister, your siblings. Do you have anyone else in your family that was involved in music or expressed an interest with music, or are you the lone one out?
No, well, my father was a very good writer. In fact, I wish I would have held on to the notes he wrote me. He would leave me a letter on yellow uh, legal paper every morning. I would wake up after he was off to work, but he would write me something spiritual, something philosophical and along just about life, just to send that to me. And I wish I would have kept them. I didn't like, I have a few of his letters, but unfortunately, it would have been a book I could have offered to the world to see. And my mother was very musical, although with 7 kids, she really couldn't follow that passion. She would sit at a piano and she would just, whatever was on the radio, she could find it. So her ear was there. And I think a combination of those two things. I think my love for music, although happened young, I started guitar lessons when I was 9, but things happened that I needed it as a tool, which I'm guessing we're going to get to now.
Sure. Yeah. Can you explain a little bit more what you mean by that?
Well, when I was 12 years old, my brother Joey, he he committed suicide. He was at our house the night before. He was very blue. I remember this. He was very blue. I shined his shoes for him, and we used to have soup races with Campbell's chicken noodle soup. So we had a soup race. I shined his shoes. He gave me $1 for it, which I still have today. I still have that dollar in a little ring box, and I have it. I never, it stays with me. It's the last thing that touched him that touched me. And after that happened, back then we weren't a rich family, so there wasn't psychologists or therapists to talk to kids, and it wasn't done. The parents would talk in the room, and honestly, I don't remember them asking me if I was okay. And not that they didn't love me and not that they didn't care. It just was not thought about at that time to worry about that because they didn't think that I understood what was happening, but I very much did. In fact, for a few years, I became very, very introverted and very quiet. And that moment at that dance, when that song hit me and I felt the energy, when that hit me, and I said, that's what I want to do. That was my way to free my soul, to free my voice, to be able to express myself again through music. And it's been a great friend to me in good times and bad times ever since.
Now, when you're 12 years old and something tragic like that happens, you're so young, just trying to process the whole situation. Were you cognizant of what suicide was previous to that, or did you learn about that through that event? And how did you, I guess, how did you and your siblings grapple with that situation? I know you're saying that eventually the music ended up allowing you to express yourself, to allow you to open up from that period of being introverted. But in the immediate aftermath, how did you and your siblings uh, how did you make sense of the event?
Well, there's no, there's always questions that can't be, the questions never get answered when that happens, because it's unfathomable to think that there wasn't another way to handle things than to to make a phone call, to talk to someone. But my brother at the time was hanging around with, he got into a bad crowd of people. His marriage had broken up, and and I know how I am as a father, how I feel, and that was devastating to him, that that he couldn't be with his children for the best for his children. He couldn't be there. It was the best for his children that he wasn't there because of all the fighting that was going on. And it was time to, and the way things are in New York, the father really doesn't have, especially back then, doesn't have the, the an argument there. Like, you leave the kids, stay with the mom. And I don't blame my sister-in-law, because I've known her. She stayed part of our family, and my niece and nephew stayed part of my family, and I'm very close with all of them. So it wasn't that she wanted. It had nothing to do with the family. She loved being part of the family. It's just, for whatever reason, they had issues that could not be resolved in their marriage. And that was tough for my brother. And then the icing on the cake, well, the icing on the cake was, he had just bought a new car that he was very happy with, his first new car, and it got stolen. And I think it was just the icing on the cake for him. And he was with some friends that he really shouldn't have been hanging around with in the first place. And he had bought a gun to sell it, supposedly to sell it. He was with those friends partying, and he rolled the gun and he put it to his head, and he put it in fate sands, and the bullet was in the chamber, and he died. And his friends came to our house the next morning, and as far as my family goes, they told my mom. They had to come and tell her, and my father. And my brothers and sisters came to the house, and there was, understandably, everyone was broken down, brokenhearted, and they were trying to process it in their own way as best they could at the moment, something that is not supposed to happen. And I do think that it's harder for people to, like many things, if it's not something that happens personally in your life to someone you love, you're looking at it from the outside, and it's hard to get the, that depth of empathy. Not that you're not empathetic, but I think that there's a depth level that can only be really understood by those that have been through it. But my parents, I think they had me. I was young still. So I didn't, I saw initial tears, but I didn't see all the tears. I didn't see the ones they cried behind closed doors.
Yeah, I would imagine it was important to them to be strong for you and your sister and the rest of your family. But I guess we all have different ways of expressing ourselves. Maybe that was just a prior generation's thought about it. Maybe they thought that maybe it would be best to just not show emotion. But I guess as times change now, it's a little bit different. I guess it probably makes more sense to express genuine feeling, right? But I guess everyone processes things differently ultimately, and it's kind of hard to say how one should act in a situation
Mm.
like that because it affects everyone differently. Like you said.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I think that it's at that time you're talking about mid to late 60s when this happened. It really that's my parents they went through the depression type people. So they went through they watched World War II. They 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 things happen. Things happen and things always happen. I don't think anyone escapes that. But how I think that the tools back then weren't the same as what we have now either. There was a certain hardness that had to be there to get back to life, that we access more internally and society accepts. So I think that's the difference.
Did you eventually end up talking to your parents in more detail about that event, or how did you interact with them regarding the situation?
Well, I cried on my own. I remember going at first not being able to kind of fathom what happened. I was 12 years old. So trying to process it was a little bit different for me at that age. Um, I think as there wasn't much conversation with me about it. I remember, and my mom is Ukrainian, or she was Ukrainian. She so she had that East European um, uh, stoic kind of feeling, and I do feel she loved me as my father did. My father was Puerto Rican, so he was more uh, showing of his emotions more than my mom was. But that being said, my mom, I do remember, and it was a unique moment because I'm not so sure she really did it after that. But she came into my bedroom. I remember like it was right now. She came in my room and she gave me a huge hug and she was crying. And it lasted maybe 30 seconds. And she turned and she left the room. That's the last time we discussed it really. And it wasn't that my brother didn't come up in conversation, but what happens over time with anyone who's passed away is you find a place to put your hurt and you recall memories and things that they either may have liked or did like at one time, or something reminds you of them, and it becomes a different conversation.
So time goes on and you go through this period of being introverted, like you were saying, and you're learning to continue living, and eventually, yeah, you like you were talking about before, you have this encounter with music where you actually you go and you see that you see them performing on the stage, and it clicks with you like, wow, this is this is something to really bring me out of this period or bring me forward through this period. Um, so after that happened, how long did it take you to then decide I'm going to become a professional musician? I'm actually going to go on stage and perform. How long did it take between that time when you were captivated by that performance and then eventually deciding that this is what you were going to do?
I knew right then. I knew right then that that's who I wanted to be. I knew that I wanted to do it in whatever capacity the universe would let me. That's where I wanted to be. And from an early age as well, I knew somewhere that I wasn't just doing it for me. When I first played, starts out in the garage kind of thing, and you're playing with guys from the neighborhood, and we're hitting as many good notes as possible when we're learning to up our game, and people start to hang out and they start to have a good time, and you're making people happy, and that energy I felt come back to me. That the energy I was putting out was coming back to me. So it was a reciprocal therapy session playing live for me, and for if you're having a bad day, go hear a band live or concert. You go see a concert, a big show, and you just feel like you've been to church. You come out and you feel just a little better.
So you mentioned before that when you were, I think, 9, you said you began to take guitar lessons. Is What kind of instruments do you play? Is it primarily guitar, or do you play other instruments as well?
Primarily guitar. I'm a horrible piano player. I do it sometimes in the studio. I'll do it, but I'll have to record this hand and then record this hand on two different tracks because they're not as coordinated. And I sing. I'm a singer as well, and I'm a songwriter. But so so primarily guitar and guitar, bass, a little bit of mandolin, a little bit of ukulele, stringing instruments, pretty much.
So you mentioned that you're a singer as well. Did what came first when you started performing as a musician? Was it being a singer, or were you a like the guitar player, or was it a combination of both? How did that work?
Well, since I hooked up with guys that were happen to be guys that were around my age that were playing, that we decided to form a band because no one else would have us. So uh, I didn't have a fear of it because I didn't know different. I didn't know if I should have a fear. So by the time I wound up in a stage in a club, I had already done it so many times that it wasn't hard for me. It wasn't hard for me to walk up to a mic and sing. So I'd say guitar first. That was really it. But then singing came naturally from it finally got out of the shower and to a microphone.
I like the way you put that. That's good. um, so what? Okay, you got to walk me through. What was it like your first time on stage? And can you talk to me a little bit about that? Your first time going up there with your band, you're performing. Well, what was that like? Bring me back to that moment.
Well, the first time was actually a backyard party. and it was organized by the band that I was with, the first band I was with. We organized it. We called it the Backyard Bash, and they were probably from the neighborhood, every kid in the neighborhood. And it's amazing how you grow up in a neighborhood in the boroughs, and there's hundreds of kids. So hundreds of kids came out, and were not all of them could fit in the yard. Some of them were on the other side of the fence and in the streets just watching us. And they liked it. They liked what we were doing. And as I said, we didn't know enough to know that we should have stage fright. We didn't know enough. So we got past that point very quickly. And it was a blast. It was great to be able to walk through your neighborhood, and kids you don't even know are coming up to you and said, "Man, that was great. That was such a good time." I know you say thank you on their faces that you're meeting for the first time. It's a great feeling. It's a wonderful feeling. Not every gig is like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So did you, I know you're a singer-songwriter now, and you do perform, you have a band that you perform with as well. But when you were first starting off, how long were you with your band for? And then when did you make the transition to being primarily just a singer-songwriter?
Well, for most of my illustrious career, I I liked the idea of being part of the band. That first band went on for a bunch of years, and we played a lot of the clubs in Manhattan and on Long Island. We played a lot of um, the clubs on the Lower East Side. One in particular was a club called Great Gildersleeves, which was down in the Bowery, where we were a regular. And it became just a thing. We just loved to do it. We were able to play all our own songs. I wasn't the only songwriter in that band, and it was great. It was just such a blast that people were liking what we had created. These things that didn't exist before, we wrote them down and gave them the color of notes. That was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And once that brand broke up, I had many bands, and finally coming to now, really. I mean, I've had even up until when COVID hit, I was in bands, but I was doing the writing for the bands. So the bands had a band name, but I was the writer behind it. It was like the Archies. There was a writer behind the Archies, but I was the writer of the songs that we were creating were written by me, and I would bring sketches to the band, and we would add the color, together. And in early 2020, I had decided. I said, well, I think I would like to start using my own name on things, and I wrote a song dedicated to, excuse me, dedicated to nurses, and which my wife is. My wife Marie is a nurse because of COVID and the work they were doing and the attention that was being given to them. And I wanted to put something out from the point of view of the people like me that are waiting home for them to come home. And it's called Come Home Safe. And it's out there for whoever wants to hear it. It's on anywhere you stream music. And but yeah, and it was nice. And those that are nurses that heard it, and frontline workers that have heard it, not only appreciated the effort, but also like the effort. So I feel good about that. And yeah, I stayed with that. I've stayed with that since. I do play now. I call them for the cover because I do cover gigs as well. So the band that is my my band is called Rev Dogs. So it's John Irizarry and Rev Dogs because like I feel they work hard. They deserve a name. So
So listening to the song and actually doing some research, listen to your work on Spotify, it had me thinking about how you go through your creative process. We were talking about with that first band, you said that you would go and you'd write down the lyrics and you'd create the songs that way. Um, I'm curious, how do you go about creating a song today? Do you go with the lyrics first? Is it the music first? And and typically, like, how do you write? Is that something that you sit down at night and you write down your thoughts or whatever, or is it something that comes spontaneously and you like jot down in your phone, something like that? How is the creative process for you, if you had to describe it?
it's 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 usually not always, but it's usually like um a spigot opening and it starts to pour out. But with that being said, I have to catch that water because I can hear it's there. I can hear what it sounds like, but I have to get the bucket to catch it and kind of maybe even filter it. There's a lot of editing that goes on as well. Some songs just fall out, come out. Others, they're sketches that you have to work on. It's not always an easy task. Most songwriters will tell you that they have bits and pieces that are with them sometimes for years before the universe gives them the other part and the rest of that flow. And other times it comes very quickly, like it's all right there. The whole story is in your head. And it's also surprising that sometimes as you're writing, you think the story is about something, and then as you're writing, you say, "Oh, wait a second, this is about something else." Oh, I see. So this is what we're writing about. We're kind of like channeling the universe's energy through us, kind of thing.
So you use the word channeling, which I find interesting. Where do you think inspiration comes from, and specifically, where do you think your inspiration comes from? You're talking about it's coming from the universe. Would you consider yourself a spiritual person? Do you think there's that dimension to it? Yeah,
I
sure.
say I am. I think that I've become more so for reasons because of things that have happened in my life. But looking for answers to those questions that can't be answered, just understanding how it all works and our connection to it and what what is it all about. So trying to get closer to that has made me more spiritual. I'm not much for, although I grew up Roman Catholic, I'm not much I'm not much on organized religion. I feel that religion and politics have something in common, that they both get corrupted by greedy people. And I think the initial ideology is left by the wayside because of greed and more personal opinion instead of trying to listen to what is needed for people to hear. And it's a shame. I think it's too bad. But I do think that, yeah, at this point, I do believe that the universe is a organism, a giant organism that we are a part of. We are, um, we could be more than more than an aphid on a rose. If we chose to be, we could be more. And but people don't. I think that people get sidelined and don't realize what they are, what it is all about, and lose that connection and start to quote the Bible. They listen to false prophets, and and that's unfortunate because if they need to listen to is what's in their soul, and everything is there, and it's a shame where they let people on the outside of their person tell them what they should and shouldn't think.
I completely resonate with those thoughts. I like that idea that you just said about the universe itself being an organism. I've I've completely agreed with that for a long time. I think that idea is called pantheism, and like that's the ideological term for it.
Mm.
And I completely subscribe to that. It's interesting. I think a lot of what gets in the way and causes problems in our world is ignorance, I think, of ignorance of the understanding that we're all in it together, right? We're all on this rock in space. And
Mm.
if people just change their perspective slightly, they could see that we're all brothers and sisters in
Mm.
this big membrane moving around.
Mm.
You know?
Mm.
And you're all a part of this shared experience, which yeah, I completely agree. I wanted to just briefly go back to what you were talking about before with your father leaving you notes. Since we're talking about spirituality a little bit right now, you said that some of those notes were spiritual in nature. How would you describe that, if you want to elaborate?
Well, well, it's I probably should have hit on this before myself, but you had asked me how I realize now how my father was processing the loss of my brother, losing my brother. And he had become very spiritual, and he did a lot of reading on subject from a lot of different noted authors on this different subjects, but all dealing with what's it all about kind of thing. And he was, I think, knowing that I was kind of young to grasp it all, he was leaving those there for me to hopefully pick up someday. And I foolishly let so many of them go. I remember them being very philosophical, very spiritual in nature, and always with love. I always say my mom raised 6 kids, my father raised one. So that was me. But the I think that he was trying to convey something for someday. And I do think that everything that's has happened and will happen, everything has happened, everything is known. So there was some whisper in his ear that was giving me a preliminary education for what was going to be in my life at some point in the future.
So yeah, so I want to talk about that. You have a album coming out. This girl, I have it right
That's
here.
right.
Uh,
Yes.
I listened to it. It's
Thank you.
fantastic, and it's about your daughter Lauren, Izzy. That
Yes.
and these tracks are I went through. I Randy Sutter, who I've has actually been on the podcast before.
Mhm.
Greenleaf in particular, I know that's one of his compositions, I believe.
It was a poem.
Um,
He's a published poet, and he's really great at it. He writes wonderfully. I keep bugging him, like, You got to put it in a book. You got to put it in a book. But he's been published, but he is very insightful and is very good at writing poems. So he had written this poem called Greenleaf that when we were putting this album together, and after Lauren's passing, he had this poem that he had sent me to read, and the lyrics spoke to me. The whole idea of the beauty of a leaf, and after it falls, the beauty once more. Just the reverence involved in the whole that whole story about leaves falling from trees and the reverence of their beauty still remains. Just spoke to me, and I asked him if I could make a song out of it, and I put the music to it, and that's what you hear now. So he, for that one, he was my Bernie Taupin to me being Elton John.
And I believe I actually saw you perform the song live with Randy back when the one of the poetry events
That's right.
the Hudson Valley poetry events.
Oh,
I believe it's Noble Roasters.
that's right.
Where it
That's
was.
correct.
Yeah. So then that was great too. That was a few years ago, I think, like maybe like 2 years ago now.
Mhm.
That's fantastic. But yeah, so this album, This Girl, it's about your daughter Lauren, Izzy. Can you tell me a little bit about her? I'd like to learn about her a little bit more. What was she like? What did she like? What did she love? Just tell me a little bit about her.
Well, Lauren, Lauren loved music. She came, she, she loved everybody, whoever she felt was worthy, she loved, and she was there for everyone who needed her. She was always there for her friends, and she had, I call her friends the tribe. And since her passing, they they have not the what I call the executive committee of the tribe has always checked on in on me, and we've stayed very close, and I'm thankful for that. I'm grateful for that. Uh, but she was always the person that helped other people. She was always the person who would find what someone's talent was and say, "You got to do that. That's what you have to do. You are this person. You need to do that." And her friends, some are successful painters, musicians, artists, like so talented, surrounded herself with beautifully talented people. And they're all wonderful and unique. And she was the catalyst that held them together. She loved music. She never missed a show, never missed a show. And she was an iconic figure in the Lower East Side and Williamsburg, Brooklyn, that whole scene, even down in New Orleans. She was a known person down in New Orleans. And that town is such a enchanted place and such a musical place and the whole thing is an art piece, New Orleans. Between the food, the people, the music, just the environment, the homes, everything is just one giant art piece. And she gravitated towards that. I think at one point she would have probably moved down there. Yeah. And it's a shame. And bring, I'll, I'll bring this in 2020 when the world went silent. I think it was unfortunately bad for her head. And I think for her, I think that she needed to have people and voices and music and sounds around her as much as possible because of her her life. And I don't want to disparage her mom really, but she had a hard a hard relationship with her mother, and it was tough for her. And her mom's voice, unfortunately, rang in her head quite a bit. And I think that, sadly, I think that, and I don't want to disparage her because everybody is the way they are because it's the way they are. And when her mom had her own trauma growing up that I don't think she ever dealt with, and unfortunately, it came out the wrong way. And I kind of wish, for her sake and for her relationship with Lauren, that it would have been addressed before their relationship broke down. So I think it was hard for Lauren when everything went silent. And I think isolation got to her. It started to affect her. She, like my brother, started hanging out with the wrong people. While everyone was supposed to be quarantined, she found people who disregarded that and were doing the wrong things. It took a toll on her relationship with her boyfriend, Arthur, who I love dearly. He's a son to me. I love him dearly to this day and forever. I always love him. He will always be my son. I think that it was Arthur couldn't see her doing the things she was doing and wanted to get back to the life they had. And he moved out. He moved out and he did a New York City sleeping on the couch. He moved like 2 blocks away from their house into his own apartment, but he was there almost every day because they had pets together. They had a couple of dogs and a cat. So they had pets together that he would help her watch and take care of. So they saw each other all the time. In fact, 2 days before Lauren took her life, he brought her food to where she works to make sure she was eating. You don't do that if you don't love someone. So he loved her very much. In July 18th, that night, and I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know it was that. July 18th, sometime during the night, she was texting with someone, and she, similar to my brother, she was at a bar that may or may not should or should not have been open. I don't know. I don't. But she went into the bathroom. She had $600 in her pocketbook. She came out into a room with people that she thought were her friends, and she went back to get her pocketbook, and the $600 were gone. No one in the bar admitted that they took it, and I think the realization that these were not her friends hit her. So now I believe that she was probably feeling alone, completely alone. Arthur had seen her slipping and kept asking her to call me. And he said, I'll call your dad. I'm going to call your dad. And she had said, if you call him, I'll never speak to you again. So I didn't know any of this was going on. I didn't know that she was having a hard time until I got the phone call the morning after and got the news. And it's interesting because my wife and I were sitting outside. It was late around noon, sitting outside, and I was feeling troubled for some reason, and couldn't put my finger on what it was at the time. But I was making margaritas with a recipe that her and Arthur had taught me how to make. And I was having margaritas that I hadn't had that summer yet. And that day I decided to have one. And that was when Lauren and I would have go out for a drink with each other. That was our drink. So it was interesting that I would be called to make those that day. And then the phone rang.
So I that has to be unimaginable. I can't imagine that, especially what you went through with your brother too. It has to be shocking experience. I mean, typically there are many people that obviously go through a situation like this where someone has decided, or voluntarily or involuntarily, to take their life. But I feel like it's not often where it's happens to multiple people in one family. So how do you get this phone call? What was the immediate response to that? I mean, how could you respond to that? Like, can you walk me through that?
Yes. Well, it was a police officer first that called me to tell me, and I'm like, "Who is this?" He said, "You have to, your daughter is gone. She committed suicide." And I kept saying was, "Who is this? Who is this? Why are you saying this to me?" And then finally he told me, "Well, Arthur Fox is here with me, who is Arthur." Um, and I said, "Put him on the phone, put him on the phone." And it was him on the phone. And he said, "John," he goes, "Lauren is gone. She hung herself." He found her. He took her down. She hung herself in her bedroom in the apartment she was staying in. Well, that was another thing. Just to back up a little bit, they so during isolation, all this is happening. Her and Arthur have an apartment, and the first day that they shut down the world, so the bar she was working at, she was managing. I shouldn't say she was managing a place in Ridgewood, and they said, "All right, everything has to shut down. That's it. We're not going to be working tomorrow. We're closed." When everything just shut, she turned the corner to go to her apartment, and she sees fire engines on the block. She gets up to her house, the apartment, and it turned out that the person that was living upstairs from her and Arthur set his kitchen on fire, and the water damage went down into their apartment. So it destroyed their apartment. So during the beginning, the most fearful time of COVID, they had to leave with all their stuff and find a place to live with their pets and all that. And that didn't help the stress factor that was on her. I'm going to jump back ahead. So I talked to Arthur. I said, I'm coming now. I said, "Send me the address." And I drove to the city to where he was at the apartment they were at. And I'm still, it's not real. It's not real. This is not real. This is a bad dream I'm going to wake up from, kind of thing. And I went and I saw he was outside with Lauren's friend, who just happens to be my niece, Sienna, and a few other people sitting on a brownstone porch, steps, a stoop, and they're all just looking down. And I took a walk with Arthur and asked him what happened, and he told me the details of what he found, and it became very real. And they didn't want me, the medical examiner didn't want me to go up to see her for obvious reasons, and Arthur didn't want me to either. Wasn't obviously not a good scene. And but I was there when they brought her out in the body bag, and I followed the body bag to the medical examiner's uh, to the wagon, and I just put my hand on the bag, and I just leaned over and whispered in her ear and told her I love her and I'm here. I said, I'm here. If you, if that, hoping that that part of her still could hear, and that her brain wasn't completely shut down yet, and that she could hear and knew that I came and I was there for her. And yeah, that day, and we went back. I went back and talked to Arthur for a while longer, but there was really not much after that. I'd asked him. I think it was the next day. I said, get her things together. I said, I'll get everything. So then a week or so, I went to get her things and take them back up to my house because I didn't want him. Because I love Arthur, and as much as it all was hurting, I didn't want him to live in a shrine. That was for me to do, being her father. Um, I knew it would not help him to process what he needed to process by having all of that there as well. So um, I got her clothes, got her paperwork, got her things, knickknacks and things, and music, lots of music, and took it all up to my house. And I started going through her paperwork just to look for something. I don't know what I was looking for, but just to look for something that said something, and something told me to look through there because I found the note that was left and was missed by Arthur and his friends that were packing up her stuff. It was on the back of an envelope, and it was meant for Arthur to find. And the note said, tell my dad I love him. Which was, I feel her way of saying, this is not your fault. At least I think that's what she was saying. But I love her too. I still love her. She's still my daughter.
First off, I'm very sorry that you had to go through that situation.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with you. She is still with you. She's still, I think, like being that love of music that you obviously both shared, all those shared experiences. I think she obviously lives on through those, and I think yeah, she's definitely with you for sure.
She's I have a very Gnostic view of 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 death, and I've had this for a long time, where heaven isn't a big cloud in the sky, and the Gnostics believe that it's different planes. This is a physical plane, and then there's like a spiritual. Your soul is, which is, can't touch it, but it's on another plane. So she's with me. She's here. My place is where I am is her place. She is with me, literally, not just figuratively. She is with me.
Are there ever moments where you're driving or it could be anywhere where you notice something and you're like, okay, that's Izzy?
Yeah.
Yeah, that comes up.
Oh yeah, that happens quite often. It happens quite often when sometimes it's something as subtle as I'll smell her as I'm walking in my backyard, or just there'll be some uh, some kind of question, well, actually, it's a comment that'll just pop into my head for no reason, and those are times. And sometimes it's colors in clouds, and sometimes it's a murder of crows that fly out of a tree on Father's Day morning that has never happened before or since. I walked out of my house on the first Father's Day, and I said, "How are you going to say, what do you got for me today?" This is what I said to her. And I turned the corner of my house, and there is a tree there, and all of a sudden, had to be 40, 50 crows flew out of the tree. And I walked up to the tree, and I never saw it do this before, and it's never done it since. But apparently it was a cherry tree, and I didn't even know it was a cherry tree. And there were cherries, ripe cherries, hanging from the tree. And I grabbed one, which was probably not a good idea because there's different kinds of cherries. But I grabbed one, and it tasted like a cherry you would buy in the store. But that tree never bore fruit before and hasn't bore fruit since. So people can dismiss it, but I know. I don't believe, I think it was Carl Jung that said, "I don't believe, I know."
I mean, that would be one heck of a coincidence for this tree to have never bore fruit, and then that one time, that's pretty amazing. I gotta say, that's awesome. I think like awe is the word to use in that situation. Um, so it, so this happens. You're back home. At any moment, well, I'm sure this happens, but do you think about your brother too in relation to what went on with Izzy? Like, how do you connect those two experiences, and what do you make of that?
Well, um, I think that certain people have certain things inside of them that can be triggered and may not show at all in a lifetime because the things that trigger them don't occur. But then those same people in the right circumstance have a perfect storm that can go into a dark place. You can have someone say that has a predisposition, or has the possibility of cancer, and they never smoked a day in their life, and then they never get cancer, so they never knew. So I think that, similar to my brother, she had gone through a series of events and that put her on a downward spiral, and didn't seek help to get herself out of that dark place that she was spinning into. I think that we all do it. We all mentally, we go sometimes down rabbit holes, and you have to, while you're digging that hole, it can get deeper and deeper to the point where you don't see light. At a certain point, you need to realize that that voice in your head is written by you. Everything, the story that you're writing is your own. You're writing that story, so you can write yourself out of that hole. And either you do it yourself, or you have to get someone to help you whether it be a family, if you have no one in family, no one in friends, you have to go and go to the right person with professional help. But you have to go to the right person. You can't go to someone that's going to say, "This is a good place in this dark place. We'll stay down here and we'll stay dark." That's not a good place. It's not a good place, and it's. I'm sure there's. I know there's many people that have been in that dark place and they pulled themselves out of it, but sometimes people don't.
You mentioned that you had people around you that helped you through this circumstance with Izzy and being able to help you continue on. Can you talk to me a little bit about the support that you had? I know you mentioned your wife before. How big of a support was she when this all happened, and how what else helped you through this? I'm not going to say through this circumstance because I'm sure it always continues, and it always continues on. You're always continuing, but what helped you?
Well, first I'll say that this is one of those things in life that is a permanent heartbreak. Like your heart is permanently broken because to let your heart heal means that you're letting go. And as a parent, you can't do that. And I'm not going to just say that that parents are the only ones, but it's very hard to do that with anybody you love. But unlike some other situations, there are natural processes. Your parents get old, and and sadly they pass on. But you can resolve that. You're able to resolve that because that is part of the deal of life. And sometimes siblings get sick and they pass on, and friends, pets, well, just it's a natural process that's part of the deal. But when someone you love chooses to take their life, there's a question that always remains that cannot be answered, whether it be a parent, a friend, a loved one, and children. You cannot. It's a, you can't resolve it. It never resolves. And I've been fortunate. Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to mention something first. That when when I was trying to process something, uh, and I'm not an avid reader, but I don't know why, but and it's another time where it's only one time where I saw this book mentioned. It was mentioned by Anderson Cooper about his mom, and Anderson Cooper had lost his brother to suicide, and his mom, obviously, her son, to suicide. Um, and she wrote a book about it. And this is the book. It's called The Mother's Story, and I recommend it to anyone who is going through their process of wanting to, looking for help to process. And it does not give answers, but what I got from it was two things. First, I got that the way she wrote the book, where she was in the present, she was in the past, her mind was, because you're looking for that answer. You're looking somewhere that answer, you think that answer is hidden somewhere. It's not. But the way she wrote the book was very much in that style. She did a great job to do that. And it helped me because I didn't feel alone in how I was feeling. It made me realize that I wasn't going insane. My mind was just working as it would in this situation. And it really helped me. It really, really helped me. Uh, I'm so grateful for that book. And it did a lot for me. In fact, it inspired me to create the album. It's because the second thing it did for me, it showed me that you have to be open about it. You have to talk about it. You have to, no matter how bad it hurts, you have to, knowing how bad it hurts, you have to try and help someone else who's going through it. And if you help one person either to cry, if you help one person to heal, or if you create a greater empathy, if someone gets closer to something they've never could understand and creates greater empathy for humanity, if it's only one person, then you won. That book is written for one person. It may have been for me because it helped me. It did a beautiful, beautiful thing for me. And I thank Gloria Vanderbilt and I thank Anderson Cooper for being open enough to show it and talk about his brother. You were asking about, I'm sorry, I went off track, but you were talking about, I'm very fortunate. And as you get older, your close friends list shrinks. But I'm fortunate that I have very, very good people around me that were there to just be there and talk to and be just someone I could talk to, even if they couldn't. They could understand my hurt, but not the depth of my hurt. And I'm thankful. Randy Sutter, who you mentioned before, Randy, um, amazing, amazing individual. He's just an amazing. It's a gift to know him. And others at the time, I was part of a band called Jerry the Bulldog, and that band, my bandmates, Kane Armistead and Larry Newman, they weren't going to let me fall. They weren't going to let me fall. And some family, my nephew Joseph Irizarry, whose dad was my brother, who took his life. He was very much there for me. He still is. He's still there for me. And my niece Sienna, who was friends with Lauren and the tribe, Lauren's tribe, all made sure I was okay. And what was beautiful about that is I could see Lauren in every one of them. So in every conversation, there was a bit of Lauren there. And I compared it to, because Lauren was a great hugger. She was a fantastic hugger. And she passed part of herself to each one of her friends in that way. And I get to hear stories about her and I get to know her better. So my relationship with Lauren is still growing because of them, and I'm grateful for that. And then as I told you earlier, I use the word God because I grew up Roman Catholic, but whatever the the management system of the universe is. I believe there is, but it could be, his name could be, or her name could be Bob or Shirley. It doesn't matter. But I'll use the word God because of my upbringing. The work, it was so hard for me to put these songs together. I had Randy, who helped me through the whole process. Someone helped Brian, a musician named Brian, was helping with the demo work, and I'm thankful for that. And but I do believe that any effort you make in your life, if you are showing you're putting the work in to do that effort, that God will meet you on the road. And God sent me the person who produced the album, who his name is Joe Leone. He's younger than me. He actually is the son of two beautiful, beautiful friends of mine, Dan and Donna Leone. And if it wasn't for him and his talent, this album would have never been what it is. And I'm grateful for that because all that it is and all that I was able to express through the songs is because of Joe and Randy. And on a few tracks are our drummer from Rev Dogs, Sandy Bookie, and as well, there's one track that has a young lady named Brianna who plays trumpet on one of the songs at the end. And I'm grateful, but I felt that it was important that I got this done. And as hard as it was, as tough as it was, I knew it was important to get it done. It was important to get it done. It's going to help somebody. I don't know who. I may never meet that person, but it's going to help someone, and I know that.
Her spirit is certainly tremendous because I mean to just to get a sense of Lauren, Izzy, just from this album, it's powerful. And you're talking about the tribe as well. I saw that one of her friends organized a mural of some
Mhm.
sort. Yeah, I believe down in the city, down in New York.
There's actually three murals of her.
Free. So
There's
yeah, so I mean, she obviously impacted so many people that I mean, all this work of art is is coming directly from her spirit. The album, the murals. I mean, it shows how tremendous of a person she is,
mhm.
and how seeing that the mural, seeing those three murals. What first of all, I'm assuming you've probably seen them in person,
Yes.
right? What when you just stand there and you look up at that, um, how I mean, how do you feel when you see something like that? I mean, that has to be a a powerful moment to see something like that.
Well, the Lauren, one of her friends from childhood, Nicole, the artist, I call her the artist, Nicole Salgar. She grew up to be a world famous muralist. So after Lauren had passed, she wanted to do these projects, and we helped to sponsor her because paint costs money. So we made sure we got her the money she needed. I'll say the tribe made sure she got the money she needed to facilitate the work. So down in Bushwick, there's a giant mural on the side of a building. Lauren, that's a picture of a painting of Lauren, a mural of Lauren. There's one in New Orleans on the side of a big one on the side of the building of the New Orleans health center that deals with emotional health. And it's also on the same building houses a club called Cafe Istanbul, who has a very eclectic mix of artists that come in there. And and I always felt that that was the perfect place for her to be. To be on the health center, to be there to help people, as well to be able to be on the other side of a wall with all that vibration from the music coming through. And there's one mural, the the bar she managed in Ridgewood. There's one there, and as a matter of fact, the bar is a shrine to her. Her bicycle is hanging from the ceiling, and there's a picture of her and lights all around it. And they still celebrate on her birthday, and she's very well known. And what I did was, because I decided to have Lauren cremated, because I didn't want us to go to a cemetery to see her. I don't like cemeteries. They remind me of a bad day. They're just a reminder every time I go of that bad day that we put someone we love in the ground. So I wanted her ashes so this way we could put it all in all the places she loved. And one of those places was Coney Island. So her ashes are on Coney Island. That was her favorite place. As a matter of fact, there's pictures in the album of her at Coney Island. And that her on the bench there was after one of the big storms that's at the beach in Coney Island on the cover there. And I gave Nicole, the artist who did the murals, I gave her some of Lauren's ashes to put in the mural. So each of the murals have some of Lauren's ashes in them. So her friends go to visit there, and they'll leave candles, they'll leave bottles of liquor, they'll go and have a drink and sit there and talk to each other and talk to her, but they're constantly going to visit. They even clean up because it is a city on a city street, so they'll clean up in front of it, and they'll go and visit, and they'll make sure that it's attended to, and all the murals, and it's created a place for her friends to go to be with her, to reminisce with her, to cry with her, to laugh with her, and it's a wonderful it's a wonderful place. It's very hard, but it's a wonderful place.
I want to talk about the album a little bit. How long did it take for you to ultimately decide that you wanted to create this tribute to Izzy, to use your art, to use your craft, and form this tribute? What was the time frame like when it comes to that?
Well, after 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 I after the day I knew what had happened, and I spent 6 months after that just smoking a lot of pot and drinking a lot, and because it hurt too much to process it all. And I realized after 6 months that I wasn't writing. And what made me realize that I wasn't processing the way I should be is because I wasn't writing. And before that, I wrote all the time. So I stopped everything cold turkey and stopped everything. And within 2 weeks, all these songs came out of me. So they were all there waiting. They were all there waiting. And then after 2 weeks, I spoke to, and after seeing, because there was still something I was holding on to personally, and I decided after seeing what I felt bravely and nobly Gloria Vanderbilt did, and to put her experience, such a personal, intimate experience with her son's experience out in the public for all to see and to help. I spoke with Randy and I said, we have to do this. I have to do this. And would you help me? And I'm grateful that Randy, being the person he is, said yes. And we created what would become the demos for it, which took a while. It was very heavy, very hard to get through. I tried to do some of the work myself, but it became every time I would go to my little studio in my house, it was like walking with cinder blocks on my feet. It was so heavy to get to it that but I was doing the work. I was making the effort. And that's when the universe put Joe in front of me, who I've known since I'm a kid. We've been kindred spirits. He's so much younger than me, but he's been a kindred spirit with me since he's a child because of his love of music. He had his parents gave him a good, in fact, tonight he's in the pit at Bruce Springsteen. He's seeing Bruce Springsteen, but he's a big music head. He's very diverse in his knowledge of music. So what was beautiful about him when we sat down to work together to create the album that would ultimately be the album from my songs, because he had, thanks to his parents again, to Donna and Dan, he had the same musical knowledge. He grew all those years with me musically because his dad and I listened to the same music. His mom listened to the same music. So we were on that same musical discovery journey together, but in separate houses. So when we started talking about arrangements, and which Randy said, he goes, I can't believe how you guys work together, that everything is so rapid and precise. And because we understood each other, we still understand each other. And yeah, I love Joe. I love him. I love him very dearly. And he did a great thing for me, and we have more to do. This isn't all we're going to do, but for now we've got this. And if it wasn't for him, this album would have never happened. It would have never come out in the way that it has, to the level it has. And I'm very thankful, grateful.
Yeah, I'm grateful too that you were able to you have a musical partner to work with to actually be able to put this together. When it's one thing to say, it's one thing that you have the music and the words yourself to be able to actually be able to put the song together, but the production side of things is always a whole different animal, I would imagine. So that's amazing that you have someone that you're able to work with.
Yeah.
And I look forward to hearing future things too, because this album is fantastic. I wanted to discuss some of the tracks with you if you wouldn't mind. Um I Someone Else's Music. I love that song. I get James Taylor vibes on it. I feel like it yeah, I get it. I feel like there's a similar kind of genre going on right there. Um, that's great. Do you have a favorite track on this? I mean, it's hard to say if like a favorite track. I mean, on something like when it comes to the subject matter on this album, but is there something that you would have if you had to pick a song on this album to listen to actually like press play? Which one would you start with? Would it be the first one?
Well, it becomes hard for me because there are times where I'm inside it, so I can't hear it the way that you would say hear it, or someone that's listening to it hears it. I can't hear it that way. And then, but there are times that I can get outside of it and I can hear it and I can appreciate the work that was done in it. And I can appreciate the songs for what they are as songs and not my songs per se. And that, my favorite track at those times changes. It's not always the same one because, and I hope that happens for others that when they hear it, because there's a, there's so many, although it's cohesive, there's a lot of different leans to different styles on songs, which represents the different emotions that you're going through, as well as the thinking process of where I was at when I wrote it. Like I can't, I don't really have a favorite song. I want to jump back to something, if you don't mind, just for a second. When it became real for me that Lauren was gone, was when I had to tell um, Lauren's brother and sister. I think that's when it hit me because I saw my pain in their eyes, which I couldn't see my eyes because I had been, well, I was crying. There were 24 hours of tears constantly for the longest time. But I think when I saw my children, when I had to tell Taylor and Jesse, my kids, Lauren's brother and sister, when I had to tell them that their sister was gone, I saw, not only did I see myself in there as a reflection, but I also saw the reflection of me when I lost my brother. And all of a sudden that I saw myself there too. And I was, fortunately for them, because I had been through that experience, I could understand what the emotional swings that they were going to go through and the process they were going to need to get through to fathom what had happened to Lauren, to their sister. And they loved her. They loved her. They still love her. They still love her. And Lauren loved them. And it wasn't about them. It wasn't and Lauren letting me know that it wasn't about me is I'm grateful for. But I wanted to get that. I wanted to let that. The songs themselves, there's so many dimensions in the different songs. There's different. I've never written. I mean, it could all be considered a form of rock or singer-songwriter, but I've never written one way. I've always been very diverse in my writing, for better or worse. It's always been that way. I never wrote uh, the same song twice. Um, but I was happy that it came out that way on this album because I wanted it to be multifaceted in that way too, because those are all the different, all those songs are the different thoughts and conversations that would go in my head at any given time. That's all the different things. And from the very real to the spiritual. There's someone else's music in my head.
I gotta say too, my head's in New Orleans. I love that track too because you're telling me that Izzy loved New Orleans. That was like almost a second home to her. I have to say something that I think is very unique on that track that stands out from the rest of the album is at the end that coda, I guess you could say, where there's that outro of that jazz music going on as if you were on a city street in New Orleans and you hear the music coming out the window. Um, I think that was very well done, and at least in my case, when I was listening to the song in the car driving, it took me to New Orleans. I've been to New Orleans before myself, and I've had moments like that where I just hear out the window like the band playing jazz music, and it really I think that song encompassed that feeling very very truthfully, and I think I mean, she obviously Izzy loved music and loved New Orleans, so I'm sure that is something that resonated with her as well. Just hearing jazz music out a window or something like that, or being at a show and hearing the music. Um, yeah, I think that's a very like poignant and powerful moment on the album.
Well, I can tell you that that is actually very, very special because I was down in New Orleans for the dedication of the mural. So I had gone down to New Orleans. So that song is my time. That's my time in New Orleans when I was there. The that's second line band. That's what they call that band, and that is what happened was Lauren's friend, who was the 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 ringleader of the experience for us down in New Orleans. She lives there, LJ. So LJ, Laura Jean, as a surprise, after we went into the New Orleans Health Center and we spoke about the mural to the community that came to listen, and Nicole spoke and I spoke and I talked about Lauren and the mural. But afterwards, she surprised me by having a second line, which is the funeral march band. That's what they have in New Orleans. And at first, it's very somber. And we walked all through the streets near the health center, and all the windows, all the shutters on the houses were opening to hear the music and hear the center line. And we paraded through the streets, and you could feel your heart opening up because of all this energy that was coming at you from every window, and just from the musicians and the the energy that exists in that enchanted city just coming at you. And while we were walking, we were videotaping it. I was videotaping, and at the end of that, what happens is that the music speeds up to what you're hearing at the end of New Orleans, and it's what it is the morning. The idea is the morning period being over, and you're releasing the spirit to a better place. So I thought it would be poignant to have not only have that there, but to have the 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 actual band from that day, from that dedication. That's was Lauren's funeral march. That was her second line that 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 you're hearing there.
Izzy is, I mean, this is obviously this album is a tribute to her, and a very well made album, powerful album. She's all over the album. I looked at the liner notes here, and I find it interesting. It says that she's actually not only is the album a tribute to her, but she's on track 5 and 8. And when I looked at that, I was like, wow. So when did you start working on some of these songs? I would imagine some of these songs are from a while back, probably.
Yeah. The
No.
the the well, one of the songs was written about her, but is on another album. I had a band, Small Town Sheiks, back in 2010. I recorded an album with that group of my songs, but the band was called Small Town Sheiks, and The Way You Feel About Her. I had written about her back then. But it's interesting because as different experiences in your life, the meanings of songs change, and that the meaning of that song not only changed, but that it's my song about the same person being my daughter, and but the meaning has changed now. What it meant to me when I wrote it originally is different from what it means to me now. So, and as far as Lauren had, I had a couple of songs. There was one song in particular. She's on a couple of, she's actually on that album too. She sings background on a song called Can You Feel It on that Small Town Sheiks Songs for Parker album that I did with my partner at the time, Mike Smith. But in that period, the Small Town Sheiks period, I had recorded a song in the aftermath of the Sandy Hook shooting called Who Decides? And Lauren was over, and I realized that I really would like to have her voice on there. So she sings a background, like a note in the background, a couple of notes in the background. So I asked Joe when we were creating the album, I said, can you, because I'm an analog guy in a digital world. So I asked Joe, I said, is there any way we could take that track of Lauren singing that note and use it as background on the album? And there were a couple of places we were able to change pitch and have it work. And so yes, she is on the album, but she that was recorded a long time ago.
So one of those songs I see is Vagabond. I know that's
Yes.
a single off the album. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that song?
Well, that song was written. I believe now that song was written from the perspective of her boyfriend. I believe I was channeling her boyfriend's voice. The lyrics, I won't go through the lyrics, all of them, but so you like to feel the vagabond drifting, drifting out in space alone, taking all on all that's coming at you when all you really want is home. And it's really saying, the song is about saying, listen, I'm here for that I'm here, and come like let me find you, and you come to me. And the last, I don't usually do this, but since it's just you, me, and your listeners, the last line, the last verse of the song says, "We used to walk the shore together." That's that Lauren and Arthur on Coney Island in my head when I wrote that. Walk the shore together. We used to walk the shore together, and the gentle waves they hit the beach, and we laughed at all the seagulls picking garbage like a feast. And that's a reference to those people that she never would have given the time of day to at one time, those people that were wrong for her that she was hanging out with. So they are the seagulls picking the garbage, and they used to laugh at them.
Wow. Wow. A lot of imagery, a lot of very powerful imagery. Yeah. Well, the, trying to put it. Hmm. how did you approach Randy when it came to this, including the song Greenleaf? Because I know that was one of his original compositions. How did you just um I know that was originally one of his poems. I know we were talking about before. You said it fit well on the album, but what was that process like? Like asking him like can we include this?
Well, he would he which he still does. He'll send me if he writes something new. He'll say, "Hey, check this out. Tell me what you think," kind of thing. Yeah, he doesn't even say. He goes, "This was this morning. I wrote this morning," and he'll just send it. And for some reason, that one spoke to me in a way that I could that the music just came. I could hear it as I was reading it. I could hear the music that would fit that. So it was like, again, channeling, like something came and said, "This is what you want to play, and you're going to make it a song, and this is how you play it." And uh, it was just a vehicle for it. The But that's what came. It all came as soon as I read it. I heard the music when it all just came together very quickly, which is fortunate because it might have been we might have left it for another day if it didn't. It was it all came together pretty quick, and it was just so appropriate for the album, and said so much to me. And the talking about imagery, the imagery of that of leaves, not only admiring them in reverence in the trees, but admiring them after they fall, was just very powerful to me. That's Randy. He's a very good writer.
Definitely. Yeah, I've gotten the opportunity to hear some of his stuff live at those
Mm,
poetry readings,
mm.
and yeah, it's interesting. He's a very good storyteller. Yeah, a lot of his work, written work, his poems are they're very powerful stories as well. Have you performed any of these songs live yet? And is that something that you want to do?
Yes, I do. In fact, we're going to do on, you're the first one to hear this outside of Joe and Randy and the people that are going to be a part of the band for this. But on June 2nd, we'll be doing an album release show at Arlene's Grocery on the Lower East Side, which Lauren had worked at one time. It's a famous club down that way, and we're looking forward to it. And it's a Sunday afternoon because a lot of Lauren's friends are work nights and some work days, but I wanted as many as possible to be there for that. The tribe. It's a lot of people, but the as well, anything over the course, we're going to have albums to sell and T-shirts to sell and things like that. We have the T-shirts are going to say hashtag Easy Forever. That's it, just that. So it invites conversation with the person wearing it for them. People will ask, well, who's Izzy? And they can talk about her, my daughter. The But anything over the cost of creating the day is going to go to mental health and suicide prevention, a cause for that. So it isn't, we're not going to make money on the day. So it's also a benefit. And not only is it an album release show, it'll be also a benefit for that. I have played it last July. I had just the initial recordings. It took us a while to get this done. It took us 2 years to finish the album because of time restraints and just it was tough to get through. So we um we had the masters. Well, not the masters, but we had the rough mixes of all the songs. So I put together a band with a horn section. So the songs that are on the album were be represented properly, and we played the full album at that time. What would be this girl at the Act Through Music Suicide Prevention Benefit and Music Festival, and it's a great organization, um, headed by Lisa Lewis and her husband John, and they're up in Orange County, up in this area. And it's a great organization. It's a very grassroots and it's growing. And I'm not only proud of them, but I'm happy to help them, help them when I can. And we'll be doing it again this year. The date escapes me, but if people find me and find my Instagram or go to my website, they can, that date will be on there and I'll be talking about it. But it's a great show. It's a day full of music. It's not only a day for people to know that they're not alone, that are hurting, but it's for people as well that are trying to heal. It's for people that are, again, for people to gain greater empathy by being in an atmosphere. And it's also the music part to me is to say that life, look at what life gives to you. Look at this intangible that is so wonderful that there's something more than this. There's something worth living for just by knowing that there's music and appreciating that. So it's a day that is all those things. It's a wonderful event. Lisa lost her brother to suicide, and this was her mission in the aftermath, is to do this. And they create, at this time, they're creating uh, kits for schools to talk about mental health and hopefully catch these kids before they that it takes root, that they learn the tools and the skills to help themselves when they're feeling a certain way, so they can find a way to the tools to manage it and not 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 wind up doing something wrong. At the very least, make a call, don't make a mistake.
What I totally agree with what you said. Music is a very powerful tool to bring us all together. Not even a tool, just a powerful celebration that brings us together no matter what we're talking about. Specifically on the track, my head's in New Orleans about the funeral march, how that music, powerful music, brings us together, and then how music brings us together, like almost, if we think about back when you fell in love with music, you're out there and you see the people on the stage, and it's something that's a powerful moment, and brain pulls you in, and now you continue making music for your life now.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you, I know Izzy, uh, her spirit loves music. Um, can you share with me some experiences that you and Izzy both have shared that involve music, and what, and can you share with me some stories that some some times that you bonded together that continue to resonate with you?
Well, we went to a couple of shows together, but I saw more of her interaction with shows through videos, through Instagram, through Facebook, and things like that. And the shows we went to, we actually saw one very special show with someone that you may or may not know, a person by the name of Shuggy Otis, who was a famous, mysterious musician back in like the 1960s and 70s. And he disappeared, just disappeared for a ton of years. And he came back out of hiding wherever he was, living a quiet life, to play some shows. And we went to one at BB King's when BB King's was in Manhattan on in off Times Square, which was one that I just always loved spending time with Lauren. She would come to my shows. We would go to run into friends and see her friends' shows. There was always music in the places we were in. Even if we went out for dinner or something, if there was music in the room, we gravitated together towards it. And it wasn't any one thing. It was just everything. It was just everything. Everything was like me. She lived her life and walked through her life with a soundtrack in her head.
So we're here now having this conversation, and in the immediate future, you're telling me about this tribute album release show that's going to be coming up, and that's definitely something to look forward to. But what is life like now, and what are like going forward? What do you look forward to in life?
Well, I think there are when something as personally when something personally traumatic happens to you, it's a sliding scale, but you can, on one end, it is just crawling under a rock and doing nothing. And the other end of the spectrum is to find the purpose that you can, that that pain, you understand that trauma, to do something the best way, how to help others. And I won't say that the album is not a, the album is a personal calling card from my heart. It's from my heart, but I offer it to the world so that it can help someone. I want my pain to be someone else's rise. I want someone else to rise from their pain, knowing they're not alone, knowing that that people care about you, that you are loved, that you are important, um that you if you're hurting, to make a call, not a mistake. That's I spring in my head. And as far as for anyone on all of Lauren's murals, Nicole put this, and I forget who it's originally attributed to, or who it's original quoted by, but on each one of the murals, it's written, "In the darkness, be the light." And that's what I offer everyone who hears the record the opportunity to be for someone else, because that's as hard as it is for me to have done what I did and create this record so that people could hear and feel something from it. I want them to take what they're feeling because of it and turn and be the light in someone else's darkness, to be there for someone else. Because I don't want anyone to feel the way I do. I don't want anyone to feel the way Lauren did. I don't want it. I don't want that. As much as possible, if I can help end that. And I don't know how, if it could be one person, it could be more than one person, but whoever it may help. If that one person is helped, then I won. And I want to mention also, if I may, the album was mastered. We found a wonderful person to master it, just Nick Messite. And I recommend when you hear the album, know that that final touch that he put on all the songs is what really just made the whole record magical for us, and we hope for everyone else that hears it.
Well, John, I have to say that I think this album certainly, just from listening to it, is just a powerful testament, and everything you just conveyed, I think, is expressed on here in a very effective and powerful way, and in a way that I think Izzy would have loved to, that she does love. And I think it's amazing that her vocals are on the album too. I think that's just a very nice touch to everything. Um, and yeah, it's fantastic. But I just want to say, I know we're coming towards the end of the interview here. And I really appreciate your time. I think this conversation, like the album in many ways, just no matter no matter who hears it out in the world, if it can really just touch at least one person's heart, I think that's a powerful enough message. And with that being said, I think we all have a lot to learn. And going all the way back to towards the beginning of this interview, I think just through this conversation, I think what's powerful is the understanding that we all need to have. We all need to grow a little bit more empathy and understanding for each other. We all have we all have unique lives out there. We all have our own different perspectives on the world, and it's through taking a step back and empathizing with one another that we have an impact on the world. And even in the smallest of ways, just in the smallest personal interactions too. You can never tell how you might impact someone when it comes to even like a small conversation that you might have in a grocery store or something, or a conversation you have with a coworker or anyone. You just have to be empathetic and understand that everyone has their own life journey that they're going through, and we all have our different perspectives. And I think the conversation we had today and this album and the murals that the tribe has made, I think they're all very positive impacts on the world. And I just want to thank you again for your time here today, because I think this conversation is extremely valuable. I wanted to ask you before the conversation comes to a close, if there's anything else that you wanted to talk about.
Well, I think I would hope. I want to just make a suggestion to your viewers, and that is to, instead of letting outside forces put you in a position of fear that turn you against your fellow humans, your fellow spirits, turn and learn about them. And we're not all so different. Everyone has heartache and everyone has joy in their lives, and everyone has some level of trauma. No one escapes that. Um, so find, instead of fear, seek out knowledge of who you're talking to or who you're afraid of before you chastise them and turn on them and turn to. We're not meant to be ugly. We're not born, no one is born with hate in their heart. They are taught that. And I think it would be such a wonderful thing if there would be, the same way it seems that there's a mass hypnosis of hate and fear, that we turn away from that and we choose to love instead and find that and let that be our sword and our shield instead of something darker. That's all. And I thank you, Joe, so much for having me on. I can't thank you enough. Um, I I feel grateful that I've gotten to do this today, and I hope that someone, one of your listeners, hears it and feels better about themselves in some way because of it.
When does the album come out, John?
The album comes out on May 3rd. It'll be officially out then. We have another single that we're going to release from the album. Vagabond is out everywhere now. The on the 19th, Don't Say Goodbye will be available everywhere. You can go to Bandcamp if you find me on Bandcamp, John Irizarry, and look for This Girl. You can pre-order CDs and vinyls, and you can digital downloads, and we'll even send you a sticker. And you can do that now. And we should have the vinyls within, from the time we're talking, probably in another week or so. And we're going to get them out to the people that have ordered. And I'm very grateful for those people that did order. We have a nice amount of of the albums going out. And March 3rd is the official release, and that'll be available anywhere and everywhere you stream music. You can pre-save it. You can pre-save the album on Spotify, which is a great thing to do. So this way it'll just pop up. You can do that on iTunes and Amazon as well. We'll be doing the show in Manhattan at Arlene's Grocery on June 2nd, which is a Sunday afternoon. It will be starting at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So it'll be an early one. If you want to come into the city and spend the day with us. As well, we're going to be doing other shows, not only near where I live, which is Orange County. We're going to be doing shows on Long Island and other places as well, Pennsylvania. So we're going to start to make bigger circles. There's some radio stations I'm grateful that will be playing the album already, and I look forward to that. One of them being Homegrown Radio New Jersey, and we have other stations that haven't told me when they're going to play it, but they will be playing it. And I'll be doing my best to do more conversations with more people. This is my purpose now, and I'm happy to do it. My daughter and I are doing it together. We're going to save the world. We're going to push the line over to better as best we can.
That's great. I look forward to seeing you live. I look forward to hearing more music in the future. This album is fantastic, and everyone out there should definitely buy a copy, pre-save it, or however you listen to your music. It's great stuff. And so, John, I just want to thank you again for the time today. It means a lot. And I just want to say, Izzy forever.
Izzy forever.
Izzy forever.
Amen. And thank you, Joe. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for this time, and it was a joy speaking with you. You helped me today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being on the podcast, John.
All right. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks.